At 2:17 a.m., neighbors heard a single scream, and then silence. By sunrise, a young woman's body was found in her own living room, her face frozen in terror. Police swore they had their man. The town moved on. But 30 years later, the case came back from the grave. This isn't just a story about murder. It is a story about secrets that rot in the dark until they claw their way back into the light. And what you're about to hear may make you wonder if any crime is ever truly buried. Her name was Lynda Carter. Bright, ambitious, only 24 years old. She had just landed her dream job at a local bank, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing bad ever happened, until it did. On the night of June 12, 1985, Lynda's fiancé called the police. She hadn't shown up for dinner. When officers entered her house, they found her lying on the carpet, strangled with her own telephone cord. A bowl of popcorn was spilled on the floor. The TV still hummed in the background. There was no forced entry, no broken windows, no signs of a struggle. It was as if the killer walked right in, took her life, and walked back out into the night. Police didn't have to look far. Suspicion immediately fell on her fiancé, Mark Daniels. He had a motive, they said. He had an alibi full of holes, and he looked guilty. Within weeks, Mark was arrested. He insisted he was innocent, swearing he was working late that night, but the prosecution painted him as a jealous man with a temper. The trial was swift. The evidence was thin, but the jury didn't care. Mark Daniels was convicted of Lynda Carter's murder and sentenced to life in prison. Case closed, or so everyone thought. But here's the thing about secrets. They don't stay buried. For 3 decades, Lynda's case sat in dusty files, forgotten by everyone except Mark and the Carter family. He wrote letters from prison begging someone to look deeper. He swore he didn't do it, that the real killer was still out there. No one listened, until 2015. A new detective, fresh, ambitious, and obsessed with cold cases, reopened Lynda's file. Her name was Detective Sarah Miller, and the first thing she noticed was chilling. The fingerprints at the crime scene, the ones on the popcorn bowl and the telephone cord, had never been tested with modern technology. Back in 1985, forensic science was primitive. DNA testing didn't exist. But now, the truth could finally speak. The lab results came back, and they stunned everyone. The fingerprints didn't belong to Mark. In fact, they didn't belong to anyone in the Carter household. Instead, they matched someone else, a man already in the system, a man with a long criminal record. His name was Frank Delaney, a career criminal, convicted burglar, a man who lived just blocks from Lynda A.'s house back in 1985. Someone police never even questioned. But here's the part that makes your blood run cold. When detectives tracked Frank down in 2015, they couldn't arrest him. Why? Because he was already dead. Frank Delaney had died in 2002 of a heart attack. He had gone to his grave without ever being held accountable, which raised the most chilling question of all. Had an innocent man spent 30 years in prison for a crime he didn't have to commit? Mark Daniels had wasted his youth behind bars. His parents had died while he was locked away. His name was dragged through the mud for decades, and now DNA evidence was screaming that he was innocent. The courts moved quickly. Mark's conviction was overturned. After 30 years, he walked out of prison, gray-haired, broken, but free. You'd think this is where the story ends. But this case had one more twist. Detective Miller kept digging. She wanted to know why Lynda had been killed, because if Frank Delaney really was the killer, it didn't add up. Frank wasn't known for violence. He was a thief, not a murderer. So why strangle a woman in her own home? Then she found it. Old police reports, a string of burglaries in the same neighborhood, and one chilling detail: each burglary had happened when the homeowner was away, except Lynda's house. What if Frank thought Lynda wasn't home? What if he broke in, planning to rob the place, only to find her sitting on the couch with a bowl of popcorn? Panic, struggle, silence. It explained the lack of forced entry. It explained the randomness of the attack. And it meant Lynda's murder wasn't a crime of passion. It was a burglary gone wrong. But this is where things get darker. Because Detective Miller found something else in Frank's file, an old witness statement from 1985. A neighbor had seen Frank hanging around Linda's street just days before the murder. The statement was buried in paperwork, ignored during the original investigation. Had the police missed it? Or had they deliberately looked the other way, desperate to pin the crime on Mark? We may never know. By the time the truth came out, it was too late. Linda was gone. Frank was dead. And Mark had lost the prime years of his life to a prison cell. 3 lives destroyed because of one night, one scream, one mistake. So now I'll ask you, was this justice? Mark Daniels was freed, yes. But freedom doesn't give him back 30 stolen years. Linda's family never got to face the real killer in court. And Frank Delaney, he escaped punishment entirely. This is why cold cases matter, because the truth doesn't disappear, it waits. And sometimes it comes clawing back to life, decades later, when you least expect it. If this case already has you hooked, hit subscribe, because the next twist is insane. Because if you think this was haunting, wait until you hear about the woman who vanished from her own wedding. 1 minute she was walking down the aisle, the next, she was gone forever. You watched until the end. Now you can't unhear this. Subscribe for more stories that will haunt you.